The doctor said things were worse than we thought they were.
With you?
With me.
With you?
Yeah.
When the angel put his hand out, did you take his hand?
I didn't, actually. I think it was just a place for me to say, okay, like, you're here. I can rest in that. This doctor, was an atheist, comes like running into my room, and he says, have you seen your x-rays from this morning?
Hold my hand, think of me sweetly with a graveyard flower.
We talk about human trafficking and how horrible it is, and then we don't have any
idea
that the open borders is like a fountain of it in the most horrific ways.
Lisa and I attended an event for a local organization doing work in the trafficking and the abuse space. And the thing that we drove home talking about was it's an incredibly thin line, unbelievably thin line for a child to be born or raised into a safe environment and an unsafe environment. That line is unbelievably thin, tiny. And I struggle to know or to understand, not to know, that's the wrong word. I struggle to understand how the Lord allows those things to happen to little Johnny or little Jimmy
Amen.
Or little Jane.
Amen.
And then over
Amen.
here, that Bobby and
Sally are just...
they're born into this
That's right.
safe, beautiful, loving family. And on the other side of this little tightrope
That's right.
is this unbelievably I don't get it. I don't get it.
I think that, man, have we been there, first of all. I mean, daily, I feel like in Guatemala. There was a verse that sat on the wall of the bedroom that I stayed in when I first moved there for like a year. And it said, to whom much has been given, much is required. And I think that was the verse I needed shoved into, because when I first got there, I was like, absolutely. So, I got to do the best I can. I've been given so much and I got to do. And it was striving and it was whatever. And then you walk through hard things and you start to realize that if the hope is my striving and my ability, we're all done. So you walk through that and you get some humility, but yet I can still go back to that verse now and hopefully, if I'm doing life well, with true humility say, yeah, it's not my striving. It's not me that's going to do this, but I have been given so much. If I can just put myself in a place of openness before the Lord, of actual practically putting myself in that place, for us, a huge part of that was licensing to adopt. If I can put myself in that place where the Lord can connect those who've been given much to those on the other side of that extremely thin tightrope, then is that where he can start to work his stories of redemption?
Is that why he allows it, perhaps?
I do wonder because, when it's in our own striving to give out of the much we've been given, then it's guilt, it's shame, it's all those things. But gosh, if we as much who've been given much can move into humility, and those who have not been given, who have been given horrific starts and brokenness on levels that we have not, if the Lord can use both of those places of humility, then his redemption, and it's for his glory then, not for ours.
And he allows those situations. It's much like, the thing that comes to mind is the guy born blind. Hey,
Right.
did he sin or did his folks sin? No. We did this so that God would be glorified.
That's right.
And he allows those things to bring people that are not in those situations and are his children to do something, which is, I could jump on a soapbox in 2 seconds, because how many of us, out of our own selfishness and pride and ego, will not engage and will not step into the fray when I think it's why we're here. I think it's
absolutely.
I think it's why we're here.
And with the ego and the selfishness and the pride, I think there's a lot of things that can be said within that we say within that looks like humility. Well, what about my other children? That's really scary. I just don't know that that's what the Lord is calling us to right now, which, I don't know what I would do if I got attached to this child and they left. That's what we hear in foster care. These are all really, really, really good things. These are not things that should be ignored. You should be asking, if you're going to step into adoption or foster care, what about the other children in my home already? Whether are bio kids or they've come through adoption already.
It's good to have wisdom.
It's good to ask those questions.
To have wisdom.
But if we just leave it at that and say, well, I don't really know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Is that where our pride and our ego and our selfishness has had the last say?
And then you send a check and you feel like you did something.
That's right.
Man, Katie, that's really good. Let's go back to Guatemala.
Yeah.
You move down. You're now nursing.
Yeah.
There. You're building the flight program.
Yeah.
For your dad, for the whole ministry. When did you guys get married again?
Go ahead, sweetie. When did we get married?
October 3rd.
Very good.
What year?
Good question.
Yeah. 2007.
Okay.
I went down there in 2006.
Okay.
So June, a year later, we were married.
So you started a family in Guatemala.
Correct.
How many children did you have down there?
We had 3 biological children. We had a 4th pregnancy that was twins that went to be with Jesus, and then adopted our youngest 2 from Guatemala also.
So you can't crack open the door of your twins and not tell that story. How did that go?
Yeah. So we...
This episode is brought to you by our friends at Azure Standard. Lisa and I just recently signed up, finally, and we are loving it. Non-GMO, organic, it is all that you can ask for. Go to azurestandard.com and tell them Plain Values sent you. You can use the code HL15 for a healthy little discount. Thanks, guys.
As you already said, Aaron was building the flight program about 2013, 2015, where we all kind of knew the Lord was moving and growing the ministry. Aaron and I were moving towards running a nursing school, opening up one that would then support the work that was going on with the hospital. So those 2 years were kind of building years. 2015, we opened the school. We had several families come join the ministry to help run everything that was growing. And yeah, they were exciting times with the aviation program continuing to grow and everything. Then, with excitement and a lot of growth can also come stress. And so we knew we wanted more kids, but we're kind of saying when and all of this. And so the school went into its, I guess it started in 2014, in 2015, it was going into its 2nd year. And we said, you know what, let's step into this. So anyway, that pregnancy was complicated from the beginning. We learned at about 9 weeks that it was a twin pregnancy, and the first twin passed away pretty quickly after that. It was kind of obvious there was something off, but the second twin really held on, and so we, with the complications, to kind of keep it a little more general, I ended up in the hospital I had gone back and forth a couple times, but ended up staying in the hospital for about 8 weeks, starting at 18 weeks of pregnancy to 26 weeks. So during that time, we had taken a couple flights in before that to the city, and
They were emergency evac flights.
Yeah.
Really? For you?
For me.
For you to save your life?
Yeah. So I'll go into a little bit without going into too many details. So in the end of the pregnancy, they figured out it really was just a slow placental abruption. So the life-threatening element of the pregnancy was they couldn't manage the bleeding.
So
Yet we wanted to keep our baby alive.
So the placenta was
Tearing away from the wall.
slowly tearing
Yeah.
away from the uterus wall?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so causing a lot of bleeding. So that,
Wow.
you know, the real way to stop the bleeding is to end the pregnancy. And ironically, so I went to school for registered nursing. That was what I did in the early years in Guatemala. And in my nursing school years, I did a paper on situations just like this and said, you know, if the mother's life is in danger too, and the baby's life is in danger, the baby's going to die if the mother dies. I really feel like that should be in the hands of the parents to decide, and, you know, really dug in my idealistic 20-year-old self. And so it was not lost on me that 10 years later, I was sitting in that exact same situation going, there is no way on earth and Aaron too, I think I speak for him, we could feel a peace of making any decision that could result in ending this child's life. If that is part of the Lord's plan, then so be it. But we do not want to step into making that decision in any way. And so the whole goal and kind of the game, there's probably a better word than that, but of the pregnancy, the playing with it was, how do we support Katie and therefore the baby, which ended up being a lot of blood transfusions, IV fluids, nutrition, bed rest. You can imagine
One of the
all the
challenges
things.
was that Katie's A negative blood type, and there's almost all Guatemala's positive. There's very
Really?
little. I mean,
So how did-
mostly Europeans that are
Yeah.
have the negative blood
So-
type. You have to cut me off.
How did they find the blood you needed?
No, we had missionaries coming in to donate blood. Aaron was arranging a flight that never ended up having to happen, but to fly up to Texas is a pretty quick place for us to get to, or Florida, working with a Red Cross agency to say, how would you get blood across the border? I mean, it was a really
We had radio announcements,
complicated,
out
hard.
and stuff like that.
What was it like for you?
It was tough. It was tough, but we had, other kids too. We had 3 kids at home. We were flying back and forth. My mom was a huge help. She would stay with Katie.
Yeah, she was a
We
nurse, so that was
Yeah,
enormous.
I didn't know, none of this stuff. It's all over my head, so I'm just trusting other people. It was tough.
We had, oh, go ahead.
And yeah, I think it got progressively worse. And so it felt, I don't know, we were getting cooked, but we didn't know we were getting cooked, I think. And you know how
Yeah.
that is. I don't know.
We had, just to speak into what Aaron was saying with your trusting people, I mean, first of all, we had 2 flights in where by the end of the second one, it was pretty bad. I mean, I was almost unconscious. I was just pretty out of it for most of the flight, not really aware of what was going on. I was not completely passed out, but I mean, there are chunks of that flight.
We
in the
barely made
beginning
it a
at the
few
hospital.
times.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of traumatic, not just flights, but prior to flights.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
How old were your kids
she's
when all this
hemorrhaging.
was going on?
Good question. So that was 2015. Anna would have been 5. And yeah, she would have just turned 5. Then Ethan would have been 3. And Levi would have been about 1.5. So yeah, 1.5. So they were little.
Does Anna remember?
She does.
Oh, yeah. It was tough.
And it's kind of a side note from the thing, but it's always interesting to see how personality and age plays into how the kiddos handled things. Anna, classic oldest daughter, rose to the occasion, kind of like well, I can help cook food. And honestly, she was extremely capable, and we raised our kids in the middle of nowhere, Guatemala, running around barefoot. I mean, she could practically make the meals at that point. We had house help also, which was enormous. They were people that were like family to us. And so, she was not cooking the meals independently, but she stepped in. Ethan, our 3-year-old, really, 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 really struggled. Probably, very possibly a personality thing, but just age, as we looked at that after coming out, was a pretty traumatic experience for him at that age. Our 1-year-old was oblivious, too little to probably realize what was going on. Also, he just has this beautiful personality that he can just kind of bounce around.
Well, it was tough. We couldn't take the kids in the hospital too, so.
So they didn't know what was going on entirely, which was hard.
They just knew that Mom was really sick.
That's right.
Have you guys talked with them as they've gotten older about
actually,
that
yes.
whole thing?
And they talk about it in a really beautiful way. Even our youngest two, who, like I said, came to us through adoption. Well, our youngest is still too young to grasp anything we're talking about. But our daughter, Genesis, she's very quick to say, well, there's really 7 of us kids, Mom. I mean, don't forget, Gabriel is what we named our son. And then Ella is what we named the little one. We don't really know if it was a boy or girl, but that was kind of what we came to as a family. And so she'll say, don't forget Gabriel and Ella in heaven. And she, and for her, there's even a place and I think that's huge. We have definitely not always done it well. We've definitely not always known when to talk about it and when not to talk about it. But honestly, I feel like our kids almost helped lead the way in that beautiful innocence that kiddos have. It's their reality, and they're going to talk about it.
You should finish out the story, probably.
Yeah. So we by the end of that second flight, especially, we got together with our medical team, and it was, I think, during that second, maybe it was the first flight in, we had a doctor come to us. He actually was the on-call doctor that night. We obviously were just praying and praying, Lord, show us what to do. And he came in, and he was positive and energetic. And I say young, he was probably in his 40s. Obviously, he had to get through med school and residency and a fellowship and specialty and all that. But he was young, and he came in and he said, all right, I'll never forget this line. He said a whole bunch of stuff, but he looked at us and he said, your baby is still fighting, and we are going to fight with him. And that became the theme of the whole entire pregnancy, spoken to us from him. A very devout Catholic, very, very, very much believed in the sanctity of life. And there are examples we could go into in that, but to just sum up, that was a huge theme. So in Guatemala, abortion is completely illegal in every sense. And we personally reaped the benefits of that through that pregnancy.
We had the option of flying up to the U.S. and knew that we would get better medical care, probably. But we also knew that we would be tempted. And
probably encouraged.
Towards, early. And not to negate, I want to say within that, there was a couple things. Even while we were sitting in that question of, do we go to the States or do we stay in Guatemala? It really became obvious that I was too medically fragile to do that. Mm-hmm. We even have really good childhood friends. They reached out and said, we'll help get in an emergency evacuation flight. You don't have to fly commercial or whatever. Right. But even in that case, I was just too fragile. And if I started hemorrhaging again in the plane, there was nothing they could do. So there was that realness in there, but we did have a conversation with a doctor friend of ours here who had gone through Yale and was very aware of, just the way things work. And he just said, do be aware that if you come to the States, you're going to, all these things you're already feeling, you're going to have to be making decisions on a really detailed, ethical, medical level at early weeks. So again, we can't really speak a ton into that because we had to kind of think through the option to a degree, and then it really wasn't an option. But what we can speak to is the beauty of the staff that came around us in Guatemala and the situation. As Aaron said, the medical care here is overall probably on a level higher than Guatemala, but we were in a hospital that really took care of us. It was a private hospital. It runs really well. And our staff stood for life, which was really important to us. We connected with the top neonatologist in the country. She had studied in Spain, and she came to us. So, we said, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to fight for this baby's life. We're going to move forward. And so we met her, and she said, in Spain, in these kinds of situations, we look at the family as a whole. If we try to deliver this baby too early, as an example, if we take this baby at 22 weeks or 23 weeks, and we actually were able to support his life, but he is blind for the rest of his life, or he has severe needs, we are going to look at that as a family decision, because your resources, your ability. You have to have a voice in this. This is not just a medical situation only at the end of the day. This is a family decision in a community.
Are you implying that that's not the way it's done?
I don't really know how it's done here, honestly. That's where we're going to show our naivety a lot when we start talking about the States, because we didn't experience it here.
I'm there times 10, so
yeah,
you guys know way more about
so
this
I'm
than I
not
do.
sure, but I can say it was so reassuring and wonderful to have somebody say, it's okay to sit and weigh the risks and the benefits and all of this and think through it. And I mean, she didn't say this part, but we could then go to the Lord and say, we are fighting for this child's life, and we are not going to end this pregnancy, but please give us wisdom every step of the way, understanding that, we could, we could possibly, I don't know that really was an option in Guatemala, but if there had been an option to deliver at 22 weeks, that is a big conversation, or should be, of the risks that come with that.
Yeah.
And so it was horrific. I mean, it was really, really hard to weigh through those ethical things. And we weren't even doing it on a level that we would have been most likely had we been in the States, because at the end of the day, Guatemala, pretty much our staff that was wonderful, and again, so supportive, but came to us and said, really, you need to get to 26 weeks before we can even start really having a conversation here of what it could look like to support this child's life. And so that became the whole goal. I mean, obviously, the goal was 38 weeks, 40 weeks, but then they said, okay, 32, we'll have good development, but really you have to hit 26 to 28 weeks. And I remember saying a few key things to my mother-in-law along the way. One was, what if he goes in that 26 to 28 week period? How will we ever know how to make those decisions? Another thing I told her early on was, DIC, which I can't remember exactly what it stands for, disseminated something, but is a condition you can develop during lots of things. But one of those situations is pregnancy, if I'm remembering everything correctly from nursing school. And so I remember somewhere along the clinical days with my mother-in-law saying, I remember learning about this in school, and that'd be the worst thing you could have. Your body's just clotting and breaking those clots down all at the same time. And as doctors don't have any idea whether to push clotting factors, whether to, it's just a really complicated situation and very hard to manage medically or anything. So there were a few key things, or a few things I had just thrown out to her. And so they said, this is our goal, hit 26, 28 weeks. And so we continued to do supportive measures, again, fluids,
She was getting
blood.
transfusions all the time.
Yeah, all of that. And I was on complete bed rest.
When those conversations were happening, how far along were you?
Really, at 18 weeks, we started to kind of have to form a plan. And so...
I mean, the doctors and the team knew this is going to get bumpy.
Exactly.
We got to get to 26, and then we can talk.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. So we're going to do supportive measures to 26. So we did. And then at 26 weeks, there was one night.
She was in the hospital this whole time.
Yeah. And so this is where, when Aaron talks about being separated, I was a good 30, 40-minute flight from them on the days and times you could fly. Or like at that point where the roads were at, it was like a 7 to 9 hour drive.
Okay, you're not talking a half-hour drive.
Correct.
You're talking a half-hour, 40-minute
Right.
flight.
And we, at that point, you know, to make a long story short, you can't fly every moment of the entire day with our airplanes in Guatemala
I totally get it.
So, yeah. So it was, so there would be, you know, a few times where I'd call and say, things are getting rocky. Do you think you could come in? What could that look like? Is somebody flying in tomorrow? Could you get on a flight?
You're trying to keep everything afloat at home.
Yeah.
You've got the 3 little kids. You've also got the work.
Yeah. I mean, we still had life going on.
Wow.
Yeah, it was tough. I don't know.
Well, and I don't want to be remiss to say this. We had an incredible supportive medical staff. We had an incredibly supportive missionary community, definitely in our hometown. Family. I mean, Aaron's family, most of them are there. So incredible support system there. Plus, we did have, I mean, people in the missionary community throughout Guatemala ask how they could step in and help. So, yeah, again, the beauty of the body of Christ was so evident throughout the whole thing. I mean, we understood profoundly and experienced deeply the value of the body of Christ stepping in. And so, but also within that, I'll start with this and then go backwards. When I got out of the hospital after everything, which we'll get to that part, I remember that first night I said to Aaron, and we both kind of said to each other, this was really hard and you know, didn't go down the way we thought it would, hoped it would. But the Lord has been near in the most real way we've ever experienced. And we don't ever want to lose that. Whatever it takes to remain in communion with the Lord on this level, we're here for it. And I wanted to start with that point only to say it did get really, really, really hard and really rocky, and not just for me in it, for Aaron, for my in-laws, for our missionary community, obviously for our kiddos. I mean, it was really hard, but the presence of the Lord was so real, and not just in a feeling way. And I mean, that could be a whole nother conversation of the presence of the Lord, but in a very real, tangible way of going, we don't ever want to lose this. We've gotten a glimpse of what it is to walk with the Lord on this level, and it's worth more than anything we could ever experience on this earth. And so with that said, and I'll back up and say, I was raised in the church, and I'm beyond grateful for that. My dad was a pastor, so I have lots of stories of the fun of being a pastor's kid, and yet still love the church and think it is the vehicle that the Lord, you know, that the Lord is using on this earth. And I think it's so important, and we love our church here. But the theology that I was raised in did not have a framework for some of the experiences I walked through. And so one being that night, the night that things got really bad, I remember praying, and again, I'm probably going a little bit in and out of consciousness at this point too. So, but I remember praying, and I had an album that somebody had sent me that was just hymns, and it was done in more of a modern way, but it was just a lot of hymns, and I would just listen to that over and over. And Psalm 91, obviously, we stood on a lot. And so I was praying that verse and listening to these hymns, and really felt like and again, this could have just been an image the Lord gave me, but as I'm praying all this, but just felt like I was surrounded by these angels. There were angels at the foot of our bed, and foot of my bed, one of them stepped forward and just put his hand out, and did not understand what all of that meant at that time, but I did just feel a peace and could go to sleep and go, this is all in God's hands. I've laid it before him. You know, he's reminded me there are angels surrounding us, and this one has even stepped forward and put his hand out. And so I called my mother-in-law as soon as it was appropriate to call. So she's an early riser, thank the Lord. So it was about 4:00. Called her and I said, Leslie, things have gotten hard. They can't find a heartbeat. the doctor's coming in to see if they can, but they can't get the bleeding to stop. Is there any way you guys can come in? And I'm sure I did not say it quite that calmly, but really feeling it. And so she said, let me chat with, I'm going to get Dwayne up. I'll call Aaron, whatever. I think I'd already talked to Aaron. And she called me back. And after waking up her husband, she is a prayer warrior like nobody else I know on this earth. And she called me back and she said, I have to tell you real quick. She said, I was praying, and it might have even been before I called, honestly. And she said, I was praying for you and Gabriel this morning, and all I got was this picture from the Lord of two hands being open. And I had, however, wherever that conversation fit in, neither of us had told each other at that point about what we'd seen. And so, it's such a small thing in so many ways, but it was such a huge thing for us to know the Lord was in the middle of it with us, that he was speaking to all of us, but giving her and I both the same sense of, I'm here, come to me, it's all going to be okay. And throughout that day, to sum up, things did get worse. And as Aaron said, it was already such a fragile state of being that it was kind of hard to be like, it was almost bad from the beginning. So you're just measuring levels of badness. You don't know how close to death you're getting or whatever. And so, but as the day went on, we had another doctor that was the internist, I think is what you would call him here. But, and so he started to say, you have got to call your OB. This is bad. We're going to lose both of you. And so that, while trying to make those decisions, I was getting blood transfusions like crazy that day. Again, it was just on that level. But I remember sitting with my mother-in-law at one point. Nobody was in there except for her and I. And we could just say, you know what, the Lord met us this morning separately, but in similar ways. And we know.
Had you talked at that point?
Yes.
By then?
At that point, we knew.
You told her about the angels.
Yes.
She told you
Yes.
about the hands.
Yeah. And it was, we felt like that was a place of the Lord just saying, I've got this. I've got this in my hands, and where this goes, it's going to be okay.
When the angel put his hand out, did you take his hand?
No, I didn't, actually. I think it was just a place for me to say, okay, like, you're here. I can rest in that. We went on to the C-section, and at that point, by the time Gabriel was, born, he had already passed away, probably on the way to the OR. And so those pictures really became for me, and I don't want to read into them too much, but for me, they became a place of the Lord just saying, I was already reaching out to him. I already had my hands wide open and ready for him. And, I can rest in that. And within that, so I go back to the OR, and our wonderful doctor, OB, he's positive, but I can see him starting to sweat a little bit. So I'm on the table getting ready for the C-section to be done. The whole goal was to do an epidural. At this point, we're believing Gabriel is going to be born alive, and we're going to have some decisions to make, but I wanted to see him, obviously. And so,
how far along was he in this?
He was 26 weeks.
He was 26 weeks.
So he was right at 26 weeks.
He got to 26
He got to 26, and because he wasn't above 28, we were right in that window where we knew we'd have to make some decisions. And really our prayer, and this is not even out of deep humility or, these beautiful hearts, just pure desperation. We were going, Lord, you have to lead us in this. You have to show us. I don't know how we're going to make these decisions. So I go back for the C-section, and they do the epidural. It does not take. I can feel it. And so, I don't know all the parameters. Obviously, I'm laying there, but they're monitoring everything. An anesthesiologist monitor, but blood pressure, all these things. All I remember is our surgeon, our OB, looks at the anesthesiologist behind me and is like, "We're done. You got to put her under." So, I mean, they waited, I don't know, it was probably like 10 seconds, but he tried twice to cut, and I was like, I can feel it, I can feel it. And so he looks at her. So the anesthesiologist, the last thing I remember on that was she just put her hands on, and said, it's going to be okay. You just look at me, you just breathe in, breathe deep, breathe deep. And then I went under. They were, shoving blood in and all this stuff, and did the C-section. And so learned afterwards that I think it was, I wish I could remember all these details. It's been almost 10 years in December 10th. This December 10th, so in just a few weeks, it'll be 10 years. But I think it was 7 full, they figure by the end of it, I think it was 7 liters of blood, because it was almost like my entire level of blood in me would have been replaced by the end. But like Aaron said, my blood type was rare there. So they were calling people during the surgery. Like, I know the anesthesiologist's son came in and gave blood.
Get out of here.
No.
In the middle of
they're doing it through the blood bank. But yes, in the middle of the C-section, they're calling people,
for
all
negative.
their emergency contacts for blood.
To save you.
Yeah. No, wow. Marlin, I mean,
wow.
Humbling on a level that is unbelievable still, even to talk about it. And so we go through this, and
but then they just started giving you liquids. Like, they didn't have, they ran out of blood.
Yeah. And they did have, again, it was a hospital that would have had access to some of those, they would have had packed red blood cells and different things that I'm sure were in there too to help.
Did you make it in for this whole?
Yeah, I mean, I was. My mom and I were waiting in the waiting room. It was a long time. We just remember seeing people going back and forth with bags of blood.
Wow.
And praying. They sent out prayer chains and prayer requests, and people were praying that whole time. I mean, it really, truly, we have experienced the power of the Lord and the power of the body of Christ on levels that are incredible to us still to think of. And so then they wake me up, and again, Gabriel had already passed away by then, and I remember holding him in my arms and thinking, wow, he's heavier than I thought. And then, again, I was pretty out of it. They, I think, had to do a lot to get me to even be able to understand that. I mean, to me, as a mom, I remember to me, it felt like he filled my arms. We had pictures, and it looked like he was obviously swaddled and bundled up.
Right.
Do you remember what he looked like on?
As far as size-wise, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
and I love that you're asking, Aaron, too, because it's so easy to go to the mom in this. But I remember even in it was massively difficult for Aaron in a completely different way. I got to at least do something, even if my doing something is sitting on bed rest and accepting the medications or the blood transfusion, all that. Aaron is like holding it all together and not sure what's going on the whole time. I mean, it was.
Well, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
One of the things that I have learned, that I've seen, and I think if I'm honest, we've lived a bit of this, not this dramatic, and up, like up close. But one thing, when people have a miscarriage or a stillbirth,
yes,
I grieve for everybody, but I especially grieve for the dads, because they're trying to hold it together for their wife while still grieving for their own loss. And then you have children in there. You have it's an incredibly hard thing, because it's just incredibly hard. How long did it take you to get out of the hospital then?
So then from there, I went back into my, anesthetic, whatever. I was back asleep. And they said to Aaron and Leslie, my mother-in-law, The doctor said things were worse than we thought they were.
With you?
With me.
With you?
Yeah. And she's at a really high risk for DIC. That's our biggest concern. She's going into the ICU. If she makes it through the night, I think things will be okay.
Whoa.
So Aaron has just lost his child and been told that about his wife.
What did you do when you were told that? What?
I don't know. I don't know. I just prayed, I guess. I don't know. And the doctors weren't confident either, you know. That was tough.
Mm-hmm. And so then you're trying to hang on to hope and... Wow.
Yeah. I mean, there wasn't anything we could do.
Right. And honestly, I was asleep for all of it. It wasn't me that was walking through that part. I was completely oblivious, obviously.
And they were praying you through it.
And they were. Wow. Aaron and Leslie both. And calling people. And, you know, even at that point, we had doctors, friends of ours that are doctors in the States saying, we'll come down, we'll get a medevac. I mean, people wanted to help in any way they could. And, you know, I do want to highlight, again, maybe as a side note, but I think it does speak to who we are as Americans too. We are not quick to give up. And that's not every culture. You know, people really, really, really wanted to know how to help, and they were willing to do anything. I had a friend who was ready to be on a plane to come down. She's a universal blood donor. She told me, I mean, if it hadn't been such an emergency at the end, there was a game plan in place for her to come. She's an OBGYN, sit outside the OR, you know, as a universal donor, but also there is a second, I mean, we were talking to her all, you know, weekly, if not daily, through especially the last part of the pregnancy. And, you know, we just had people who were willing to do whatever to step in. And we had a South African couple that worked with us too in our town there in Guatemala, Kania. I mean, they also were willing to step in and do anything. They're calling people for blood. They're helping with the kids. They're, you know, it can be, I think where it struck me so deeply was the mission field attracts a lot of type A go-getter. We're here to help. And that can lead to friction. It can lead to some savior complexes. It can lead to contention, conflict, and I mean, honestly, can lead to destructions of ministries, if we're honest. Yet, in those times, those people did not even miss a beat. They were ready, and they put their money where their mouth was. They stepped in, they did it. I mean, over the next couple years, I remember I met a missionary couple. We introduced our names, and suddenly the wife goes, "Oh, I know your name. I went in and gave blood for you 2 years ago." I'm like bawling, and it was incredible the way people. So, you know, we do a lot on the mission field of talking about our cultural tendencies and where pride can get in and laying that down. But I don't ever want to negate too the way the Lord moves through some of those things. I think it is good to always be aware. Of course, we need to see where we're living out a culture or personality and not humility and not where the Lord's leading is. But also the Lord knows all of that, and he uses it too for his good, even if it's, And so it's, so that night I go to the ICU. And again, I, in many ways, had the blessing of being completely out of it. I remember waking up like 5 times, and all I wanted was water. And I had no idea. Again, blissfully unaware of what was going on. Just please give me some water and ice. And he would only let me have ice, I'm sure, because they were, I should say, I would imagine, because they were wanting me in a state where if they needed to go back for another surgery, I was able. And so I get to the next day. My mother-in-law is there. Aaron is there, obviously. I mean, I clearly made it through the night. And that morning was beautiful and rough all at the same time. Our doctor came in and, I mean, honestly, he was, just distraught, defeated, really confused. He stayed up actually through the night, my mother-in-law told me, just poring over my charts. Like, where did we miss this? Where did this happen? Where did he came in and apologize with tears in his own eyes? I mean, it was hard on everyone. And I think Aaron said, our doctors weren't super confident. But I will say, they also were very humble and real.
No, I just meant when they came out of the OR, you could tell it was traumatic.
Yes.
And
yes.
They were shocked. You could just.
Like
yes.
It actually shook them.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
yes.
When your doctor came in the next morning and was defeated and distraught, like you said, they missed something?
No, and that's what I don't think they did. No. I mean, if you put, I'm going to say this as a nurse, if you put 5 medical people or more in a circle right now to go over all my charts and talk about what was missed, I'm sure this one's going to say, you missed it. You have 5 people that are all going to tell you what was missed and what could have been done different. And, one of the factors that went into it, I went on complete bed rest for those 2 months of sitting in the hospital. Research, especially research out of the States, shows bed rest doesn't do much. I mean, our baby went to be with Jesus anyway. Was it a waste to have gone on bed rest? I don't know. So, what I loved, again, just to speak to, yes, it was really hard to have this go down in Guatemala. There would have been a cultural familiarity aspect if it had been in the States. There would have been, everybody spoke English, praise the Lord. And we do speak Spanish, but, you're in those kind of situations. It's nice if somebody's speaking your first language. So in the States, we would have had that. Everybody would have been speaking literally as their first language, the exact same language. Just some of those things that are obvious that it would have been easier in some ways to go through here. But they did it so well in Guatemala. And I think one of those things is they wrestled through it. They really were in it. He left his father's 80th birthday party to stay. He did the C-section, went and said happy birthday to his dad, and came back and sat there all night long outside of my room in the ICU. That's incredible. And honestly, he was on call when we first met him doing his rounds. He's really a fertility specialist. This isn't even his day job, is these kind of complicated pregnancies. Now, because he's a fertility specialist, he would know more about twin pregnancies. But, there was a real heart there. We actually named our son after him. The middle name was after him. Mm-hmm. We just wanted to really honor his heart and the way he put himself into it. And we even were able to refer some patients to him for other complications from our clinics. To him, we kept a good relationship for many years and still would. Now we're in the States and he's there and communication is hard back and forth, but. So
how did you get better?
So that morning was hard. I was on oxygen. I was on antibiotics for a probable infection. Yeah, I couldn't talk at all, which obviously is very hard for me. So actually probably plays into the next experience I had that did not, another one of a few that did not meet my theological framework at that time. But so, my mother-in-law, Aaron, they had all been there for a couple days at this point. So they said, somebody stayed. I think it was your mom that stayed that afternoon. But she also went and slept for a little bit and all of that. And so
it was hard. When she was in the ICU, they wouldn't allow you back there as much. You had to get just short windows of time. And
no kiddos. But they did, I think this was the second, I'll share the afternoon and then that second day. So I remember that afternoon again, I couldn't talk, which probably was something the Lord allowed because it did force me to just sit before him. There was no talking it out with people. There was no, and so that afternoon I remember just saying, what happened? Like, you ask earlier, you had said, why does the Lord allow some things to happen? I mean, I sat there going, I'm alive. We didn't even realize how close to that not being a possibility we were. But our child, who we did stand in faith and prayed and fought and all of this, is no longer here on this earth with us. Like, why? Why did we just walk through this? Why is he not here? Like, I mean, just where are you in this? What? And I remember just thinking, obviously there was postpartum stuff going on, hormones and all of these things. But I remember just thinking, my arms are so empty. What do I do with my arms? Like, there should be a baby in them. And that wasn't even necessarily a conscious thought. I think it is just the beauty of how the Lord made us as mothers. You go through an experience like that and you should have a child in your arms in the end. And I just remember saying, I don't know what to do with my arms. I don't even know where to put them. And so just out of these depths that I didn't have words for and couldn't verbalize them if I did, where are you? And I would say this was a vision, which again is not something I was raised in, visions and dreams and all those things. But out of these prayers, and I would imagine my eyes were closed, but just in this place in front of me, it was like I was brought into heaven. And right there in front of me was this whole choir of angels just rejoicing. And it was, just praising the Lord, of course, and hallelujah and joy and dancing and just utter joy. And I remember equating it in my mind with the joy of when a sinner comes home, when that scripture in the Bible that just talks about. And so it was like I turned my head and there was the Lord's arm, and I never saw a face or anything. And there was our Gabriel laying in it. And even though I couldn't see the Lord's face, I had never experienced or really understood at this level. It was like utmost joy, yes, but just pleasure and delight and everything you hope for in a father being poured down on our baby. And it was really the first time I think I had seen God's father heart for all of us, of course, but having it poured out on my child that we had fought for and we had stood with was incredible. And then it was like his arms turned and there was our other twin sitting there. And that's when it was like, I can rest. He's been holding the other one the whole entire time. And it just, he did not have to do that for me. And I didn't have a theological framework for it. It wasn't something I even knew to ask for. And that healed my heart. I still grieved massively, and the next few years were really, walking through that was hard. The next few years were harder than even walking through that whole situation. It was so hard. The grieving process, the grappling with the almost dying, it was horrific. But it was like my soul and my heart, I could grieve knowing that he had them in his hands, that they were being rejoiced and loved over, honestly, better than I could even as a parent. They had the perfect father. And it was a comfort for me as a mother. It was what I spent the next 5 to 10 years wrestling through as a daughter, as his daughter, going, well, this changes everything if you delight in us, if you love us, if, you rejoice over us. If this is your father's heart, then I want to know that more. And so yeah, that was an incredible, incredible gift from the Lord. And then continued on. Obviously, I was not well physically.
She wasn't getting better.
And I wasn't getting better. And very wisely, nobody told me that. I mean, I could start to talk, so that was helpful. So in my mind, I was getting better. But, they allowed Levi, our littlest, to come in. And I remember, I think my mother-in-law said, she just needs to hold her child. And that was so healing to just hold him for a little bit. And obviously, Aaron and Leslie were there as much as they could be. My parents came down. So again, we just had such support, but really we needed the Lord in a deep way. And again, I want to highlight the necessity of community, but even an incredible community is not what's ultimately going to walk you through those deep questions and those deep experiences. And so one night, so they had me on pediatric settings for all my alarms because my heart rate was so high, my blood pressure was, it was, again, I just wasn't doing well physically. I was still on oxygen, all the things. They couldn't get the fluid off my lungs. So, and the thought was, that can be very normal after an emergency C-section and pushing a lot of fluids and blood transfusions. But as it was getting worse instead of clearing, then there was, the question is, what do you do with that? And so one night, my alarms are going off like crazy, and I was starting to become aware enough to be like, is this it? Like, I've been in this hospital for 2 months. Is this where I'm going to die? Just in this ICU room, and so this one resident came in, an atheist. And I say that only because later on in the conversation that came to light as we talked about some other things, but he came in, he was incredible. He was just really, really young, but knew exactly how to walk me through it. And I said, these alarms are going off. I'm freaking out. What's going on? I need you to lay it to me straight. Am I going to die in this bed? And, he was calm, he was steady, and he said, I can't tell you that. Like, you're a nurse. I can't tell you if you're going to die in this bed or not. He said, but here's what I can tell you. He said, if I was to walk out this door right now and I was to get hit by a truck and I was to end up in this ICU, my very own ICU here, in a full body cast, and I wake up, he said, the first thing I would do is say, how am I getting out of here? And completely apart from any element of faith, he helped redirect to, where's the hope in this? Where am I putting my mind to? Where are my thoughts, which are so biblical? He didn't have a biblical framework for it, but, even as we walked through the next several years, without hope, without a place to put our mind on and our thoughts, and we're done before we've started. And so he said, he talked through it and asked me good questions, and we came to the point of, okay, my goal was to, there was a lot of factors that I would have to meet before I could leave the ICU. I was nowhere near that. So that was not a good goal. But if I could at least get to a point where I could sit in a wheelchair and make it out with portable oxygen, I think I could still have the mask, then they would let me meet my kiddos in the garden. And I was like, there it is. That's all I want, is to be back with my family and my kiddo. They had a little central garden. And so that became the goal. And then we did go into conversations about different things. He just stayed with me because I was so worried. I was just alone and scared. And so we then chatted through other things, and I had this hope, but, he just sat with me. And so we had this whole conversation and all these things. And so then that kind of became the new goal. A few days later, it was a week total that I was in there. So I get the days a little mixed up. I think that was on like day 3. So day 5, it was a rough day. This was unbeknownst to me, but my mother-in-law came to visit, and the doctors met her at the door and said, look, Katie's not getting better. This is day 5. Her lungs are filling more and more. We're going to meet this afternoon as, staff and create a plan. But just so you know, we're talking about intubating her and putting her out for the next 2 weeks, giving her lungs some rest, and seeing if we can get the fluids off medically, like pretty much just medically manage her and put her in a, unconscious state to do that. So she came in and did not say any of this to me and just sat down. And about an hour later, this lady comes in and says, hey, I know so-and-so.
But this lady came in. It's not an easy thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
you couldn't get in. This hospital had real high security. You couldn't get into the main doors of the hospital without going through security. And then they had security and magnetic badges and everything to get in the ICU. I couldn't get in. I mean, we couldn't get into the ICU.
Yeah.
So how did she get in?
Yeah, I'll tell you that part because she told us later. But she said, it was so crazy. She said, I walked in and she had been to this ICU before to visit.
You knew this person?
No, we had never met her before in our life.
Never met her.
She says, I'm
Came off the
sisters
street,
with
yeah.
so-and-so. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I never even knew that person had a sister. These are friends of ours that live in Guatemala City. Well, later I learned she's sisters in Christ. They went to church together. And so as Aaron said, with the security, it might be helpful to put in here too. I mean, this is a hospital that diplomats might end up at. And I mean, this is a well-known, well-standing hospital that's done things at an excellent, there's a couple now in Guatemala, but that one was it had been there a long time. And so, you know, there's wealthier people coming. Security is high. If you have enough money to be in the ICU, I mean, for us as Americans, the amount of money it takes to sit in those places is ridiculously cheap compared to what you would pay stateside. But for a Guatemalan, I mean, it's
a whole other ballgame.
Absolutely. Nobody can afford that. So you're wealthy if you're in there. And so it is high security. So she says, I came in and I was standing outside the door and she said, I went to knock on it, you know, push the alarm, whatever. She said, and the door opened and I knew the person walking out. And so we chatted for a little bit and then I just walked right in after him. She said, I walked around, it was a circle and all the rooms were off of the circle.
The ICU, yeah.
The ICU. And the way she went, she took the long way around. Like mine would have been one of the last rooms that she would have encountered. She said, I walked around that circle and she's like, it's almost like I was invisible. Nobody said anything to me. Nobody talked to me. I mean, we're white. And so it was pretty obvious which one I was. So she just poked her head in different rooms till she saw some white people and walked in and said, you know, are you Aaron and Katie? And so she sits down and says, you know, introduced herself and then said, I've been praying for you. Our church has been praying for you. I'm also in the middle of a 40-day fast where I've been taking communion every morning. And she said, this morning, I felt like the Lord gave me a word for you. Would you mind if I share it with you? And then we pray and take communion. And we were like, sure. And
she doesn't know how sick you are.
No,
she
I
doesn't
don't
really know
how
bad it is.
Exactly, because I think we didn't really know how bad it was. So, I mean, she should have been getting some reports through her church, but or her friends. But yeah, I mean, everybody's pretty aware. And I will say, I remember sitting in a chair that day. So it was a pretty big deal that I'd been able to sit up. Obviously, they had walked me to the chair, but I sat down. I was going to eat lunch sitting in a chair, you know, see how long I could make it with the oxygen on, but, you know, breathing and all that. And so so my mother-in-law and I are sitting next to each other. She's across from us. And she says, well, let's just open with prayer. And again, please hear, no theological framework for any of this in my experience. So she prays and she said, you know, it just starts as obviously a prayer for healing and anything that you would obviously start with while somebody is sitting across from you sick. And it goes into this prayer time for revival in our area, for the area that we live in Guatemala, for blindness. Well, I'll speak into this a little bit. So there is witchcraft in our area. And so mostly within the indigenous population, but there's such a mixing of indigenous and Latin in our area that it's just, there's a lot of witchcraft. It's really seeped into, if not completely linked 100% in the Catholic Church too. So it just is really seeped into everything in our area, this witchcraft. And so she started praying for blinders to come off, for people to see Christ. You know, she said, I see people just almost like they've been wrapped in all these bandages, and it's like the Lord is just going to remove those, and they are going to see him clearly, and they're going to fall on their faces before him, and just a few other things. And I mean, I was praying, and my mother-in-law was praying, and we got it done, and I was like, wow, I don't think any of us were expecting that. And then we took communion, and then she said, can I give you the word? And we said yes. And she said, the word that I feel like the Lord gave me is, it is finished. And I remember my mother-in-law, who's, again, a very, very faith-filled woman, I mean, just incredibly so, said, well, that would be wonderful. Like, if that could be the word, we would really like to be done with this whole situation and move on. And so, we laughed, but then I think we prayed again. And so then she left. And my mother-in-law said, okay, I need to go too. My father-in-law was flying her home that day and all of this. And so I go back to bed, sleep, all the things. And the next morning I wake up, they come in, they do all the exams they're doing every morning, arterial blood draws and all these things. And they were doing x-rays every few days. I think it was every other day at that point. And so, all normal stuff. And about an hour after that, this doctor, who was an atheist, comes like running into my room. And he says, have you seen your x-rays from this morning? And I was like, no. And he's like, I'll be right back. He runs to the other part of the building. I mean, this is a very small ICU, so I say runs, but there was an energy behind this. He comes back with both of my x-rays, one from 2 days earlier, one from that morning. And he said, this is your x-ray from 2 days ago. It is literally completely white, Marlin. Like, I wish so badly we had taken a picture of those 2 x-rays, because it really is incredible. When they say they were talking about intubating because they cannot get the fluid off of my lungs, I mean, that is what this showed. Fluid in every area of the lungs that there could be fluid. I mean, so black would signify air, and then white would signify fluid or, mass. And so completely white. And he said, this is your x-ray from this morning. And it was completely black. There was not one sign of liquid anywhere in my lungs. And again, no framework for this theologically. But I was like, you've got to be kidding. And he's like, there's no medical explanation for this. And I mean, I had the opportunity to say it's the Lord, but
I don't exactly know what to say.
I did not either. What? So I called my Aaron and my mother-in-law, and I'm like, you are not going to believe this. So the doctors, people had stayed away because I was sick, and nobody knows what to say when we're all hoping for this baby. We're all hoping for me. We're all pulling for this. And now I'm in the ICU about to be intubated. No, and that morning, I mean, nurses came by, other doctors came by. It was like everybody not only could breathe a little easier, but everybody has watched this for 2 straight months.
Yeah.
And everybody is going, and there are a lot of believers in Guatemala. And so, I mean, some came right in and just said, this is the Lord, right along with me. But immediately the plan changed. This is a Wednesday. The plan changed from, okay, intubation, 2 weeks under, we got to get the fluid off his lungs, to, all right, where do we go from here? How do we get her out of here? So, and some of this was, I had held Gabriel for a little bit, but they had been able to preserve him, for lack of better words, and he was in a casket at home. And if they could get me out, then I could get home for the memorial service. And so that Wednesday, they looked at all the parameters. You had to be able to walk the entire ICU without oxygen to get out. And I'm sure they fudged a little bit. I think this would have been a little bit more of a drawn-out process had there not been a push to get home. And I hadn't been everybody knew I'd been in there for 2 months. I just wanted to be with my family, obviously. And so I think it was even Wednesday afternoon, they had me walk I'm walking the ICU, and I was like, I'll walk this 20 times if I'm sure there was adrenaline on board too, and hope,
but
and
you
all
could
this.
do it.
But I did it.
You did it.
Walked it, no oxygen. So they had me stay the night. I wish, again, I could remember all these details. But
they were going to do like 3 days in the hospital room after they got out of the ICU.
Yeah.
And then they're like, you don't need to be here.
It was pretty awesome. You have to you can't be discharged from the ICU. So they had to discharge me from a different unit. Right. So they were like, all right, you walk the ICU on Wednesday, you spend the night. Thursday, we'll get you out of the next unit. And then Friday I was going home, and I did. And I went home in a wheelchair. And again, they pushed. Right. It was helpful that I was going back to, people that were at our clinic that were medical people, doctors and nurses and all that. And so,
they're not
right.
discharging you to
that's
someone
right.
who doesn't know what they're doing.
That's right. So there was, but they pushed it. And I'll say in here too, we had I'll just say the name flat out, because I would really love to honor them. So Christian Care Ministry, we had MediShare insurance ever since we had been on the field and started having kiddos. And so Aaron had called them about a week and a half. I mean, ended up being just a few days before the C-section. And he said, hey, we know you guys don't cover maternity, but the doctors are having conversations that if our son is born alive, they would airlift him to a NICU in Miami because they don't have the support. We didn't have the NICU services in Guatemala. And he could be life flighted. They could get him to where he could be stable enough and intubated and all of that to get to NICU in the States if needed. And so Aaron said, I'm really just calling because their plan does cover life flights from, the child is covered from the moment they take their breath on earth. Mm-hmm. And so the guy said, well, he said, absolutely, we can talk about that. He said, but also this is not maternity. This is a life-threatening condition. He said, so you gather all your paperwork, you get this together, and you send this, he said, you don't have to do it right now, but please be aware to collect things and that this should be covered if we can. It's a sharing program, my 2-month hospital stay.
Wow.
So Aaron has been selling things right and left.
We used all of our savings pretty quick, and then it was like anything that could be sold was getting sold.
Animals, vehicles. I mean, he was just selling everything we could to cover him. And we get to that Friday, the very last, this is the last stop on the way out. You have to pay your bill. And Aaron comes in and he's like, we're $10,000 short. Like, I can't.
$10,000.
Yeah, $10,000 short. Like, I don't have anything left to sell. I don't have any way to do this. And I mean, I will be honest, like, money's kind of a side note at this point. Like, I'm alive. We're pretty happy. But I was like, you have got to be kidding me. Like, I'm this close to going home, and it's $10,000 that's going to keep me in this hospital now.
We've been publishing Plain Values for almost 13 years now. And about a year ago, the team and I decided to put together a compendium, a best of, if you will, of our favorite stories, the most impactful stories of all those years. And Invited is what we built out of those conversations. It is 194 and 4 pages, and it is absolutely a thing of beauty. We do a monthly gathering here where we just simply open our doors. It's called Porch Time. And the story of how Porch Time came to be and how our family was invited into that and how we are inviting you and every Tom, Dick, and Harry, anybody who wants to come, can come and hang out at Porch Time here at the office in Winesburg. So it was such a natural fit to use the home of the founder of Porch Time and to call it Invited. You can find it on plainvalues.com on the shop page, and you can now consider yourself invited.
So we borrowed to get out, and my sister-in-law started a GoFundMe, and I don't want to exaggerate, but it was within days, if not hours. We had 20,000 in there. I think it was incredible, Marlin. And again, not to overblow finances, because we had bigger things we were worried about than finances, but the Lord provided he just always does, and he did again. And so we borrowed the money to get out, and then within days we're able to replace it. And it was incredible. And then I'm gonna stay on this for a second, just because we're on this, and it isn't the biggest thing in the story, but we do believe the Lord is going to use it. So a month out of the hospital, we've gotten all our paperwork together. We've gotten it translated. We're going to send it in. I mean, again, we do not have a dime to our name. Like, even the extra money that came in through the GoFundMe, obviously they take a percentage. Mm-hmm. So we had a few thousand left by the end of everything. And we were able to use that to pay for these flights that I had taken in. Nobody was sitting there the day after an emergency flight being like, I'm sorry, can you cover that cost? So we were able to pay for that. We were able to pay for hotel stays, that Aaron had done, that his parents had done. There was a ton of costs that was outside of the hospital bills, obviously. So we were able to pay all that back, felt so good about that. And then we're literally sitting, with nothing again. Aaron had been renting a property for animals, and it was kind of for cows, like retreat property, if you want to call it. Our town is pretty small, but this was kind of out the backside and out a little ways. And we would go there, just play baseball, whatever. You can edit this out if you want, but the kids would actually take sticks. This is why I love how our kids got to grow up in Guatemala. They would pick up the dried hard cow patties, pick up sticks, and that was what they would use for their base. Not that we didn't have baseballs and bats, but like, why wouldn't you? That was your, they saw an opportunity and they went for it. I mean, they were just unfazed by anything. They lived outside and grew up that way. And so we would go there for these, just kind of a little getaway. And so the owner of the property had said several years before that it was for sale, and Aaron had talked to another person about it. That's actually how he ended up getting to rent it. But the price was like astronomical. And so he came to Aaron between 6 and 8 weeks of being out of the hospital. And he says, hey, I talked to all my sons. No one wants this property. I'm willing to sell it. And Aaron was like, first of all, we could never pay the price you're asking. He's like, and second of all, this literally could not be the worst time in our entire life for you to come to us. Like, we don't have any money to our name. And he looks at Aaron over the course of a few conversations, but he says, well, I've prayed about it. I mean, this is a pillar of faith in our community. One of those older gentlemen and his wife that you just want to be like, I'm coming with recording equipment, and I want to hear every story, everything you've ever walked through. Just incredible. And he says, well, I've prayed about it, and I believe that this is the land that the Lord has for you guys. You guys are the ones who are to buy this. He said, so you go home and you pray about it. You tell your wife to pray about it. He actually told me that person. He said, you pray about this. He said, when we bought this land, we didn't have a dime to our name. He said, my wife and I walked this, and she went home and she prayed faithfully that the Lord would give us this land, and he did. And Aaron goes, well, that's what you say, Katie, when you don't want to negotiate your price down. It was like, I'm like bawling, that's so beautiful. I will go home and faithfully pray over it. And then we're pulling away, and Aaron's like, well, of course he's going to say that. Exactly. Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
But he did come way down on his price. But again, I mean, we couldn't even touch it.
Right.
So we say, well, we're praying about it. So my dad had some health problems, and they had always talked about going in on some land with us so that my mom would have a place near us if needed, and all of this. He had some significant health problems. So I said, let me just call my parents and see where they're at in that whole conversation, So I called them, and they said, well, we could be interested. They said, so let us talk a little bit, see what we can come up with. And so within 1 week, he comes to us. We pray about it. I call my parents. The next day or 2 days after, we receive a check in the mail from our insurance, our non-insurance insurance, MediShare. Mm-hmm. My parents call back, and literally what they could provide and what the check was each half.
No.
And we were able to go in. Now, Aaron is still trying to negotiate with this man, Marlin. That speaks to my husband's negotiating skills. I'm like, just give him the money and buy the land. Yeah. So Aaron's like, well, I think we could do this, but, would you be willing to come down? I think we were 10,000 short or something. So he's like, could you just throw in the extra 10, for it to be exactly half? And he's like, I don't know, this older man. And so he came to Aaron either later that day or the next day, and he said, look, I have a guy who's come in and he's offering me way above what I'm asking. And there was a man kind of buying up property in our area. He said, he's offering me way above what I'm asking. He said, I don't want to sell to him. I want to sell to you. He goes, but you're going to have to stop negotiating with me. You're just going to have to pay the price I've asked for. And so we did. We had, we covered the extra 10 and then went and bought the property. But during that time where we were praying over it and walking this land, I just remember it's a good sized piece of land, and it has the opportunity not only to build. We were like, that will probably never happen in our lifetime. We've just taken everything just to buy this, but to build, and we've always wanted to be able to provide kind of a retreat place for other missionaries or people in ministry that just need a spot. And so it had lots of opportunity, but I just remember telling Aaron as we were praying over it, I really feel like the Lord wants to use this for kiddos too, and just, as a blessing to kiddos in need. And we had already been sitting on a couple of orphanage boards, so we were not unaware, or children's homes. We weren't unaware of the situation of all of that in Guatemala too. And so we still don't have all the details for sure on that property, but and there's other things we could say that just probably aren't necessary right now, but the Lord has really already started to use that piece. But we do really continue to pray into it and want to be faithful to whatever he wants to do with it. It was clearly from him. And we've said we're such savers and thrifters and frugal people. If it had not gone down in that order, if that insurance check had come in, we would already had it wrapped up in savings and something else. And, it was like the Lord knew, because literally, we were back to zero within 1 week of that insurance check coming through. We put it right back out, and it was like, and here we are again, right where we were 3 weeks ago. So we really believe that was the Lord's plan, and he's going to do something with it. What has been interesting is the Lord has used our story in powerful, powerful ways. So you step in. Never would I have ever thought I would be somebody who could say, I literally have a miraculous healing as part of my story. But what was, I will say for myself, what was more powerful is not even the miraculous healing or the powerful stories that we've shared. It is the way the Lord met me in the grief, in the extreme desperation, in the depression, in the anxiety, in the panic, in all those things afterwards that I've now learned are very normal to walk through after not only loss, but a near-death experience, even with a miraculous healing attached. I started saying that night out of the hospital, we said, I don't ever want to step away from the Lord. I want to know what it is to continue to know him in these deep ways. But that had to be worked out. There were sin attitudes. There were lies. There were false beliefs. There were so many things that he had to walk me through. I will speak for myself in this, to where I could then abide in him. And definitely, I will never do it perfectly, but even just from that humble, desperate cry of, Lord, don't ever leave us, to the next 5 years of healing that happened, or 8 years, that all had to be worked out on the daily. And so we have seen where we very naively, honestly, this doesn't speak to us at all as people. We did it with pride intact. We did it with naivety. We did it with idealism. We said, okay, Lord, use us. And he did. Through a lot of suffering and pain coupled with that, and loss and surrender, and our own yuckiness being massively visible to us, if not lots of people. But he did. He met us, and he did powerful, powerful things. But just as powerful were those small things. Just as powerful were the days where I'm not sure how we're going to make it through another day, and he met us that day too. And the stepping into adoption, stepping into some of these other things that can sound lesser because they're not attached to miraculous healings and all that. It's just as powerful, and he uses it just as much as those big blown out experiences.
Wow. I think something that I'm learning as I get older is he is not often, and obviously I don't want to paint with this massive 5 foot brush, because he does things however he wants.
That's right.
He loves this one and he loves this one.
That's right.
And they're different, but they're the same. And the reality that he seldom uses someone in a huge way without taking them through some hard things.
Yeah.
And kind of stripping them down.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, when he throws you into that road burn, into that, painful situation, you realize and you
That's
see.
Right. That's right.
I can't do jack squat on my own.
That's right. That's right.
And oh my goodness.
And then I think he can use you in the daily, which is sometimes harder. We've, going into coming to the States, I think here we've struggled with mundane. Like, man, how do you follow the Lord when it isn't trauma, and it isn't intense adrenaline rushes, and it isn't death in your face. Like, okay, we can breathe and we can calm. And there was a season of necessary healing when we first arrived here, especially for me. I mean, deep, a need to be out for a bit and really see him, but also then a place to be like, and now what? Now we're not.
It's a whole different game.
Whole different game. What are the temptations here?
So how did you guys make the decision to move to the States?
Well, just to give a little bit of backstory, but we had bought a new plane. We had 2 twin engine planes that weren't real well fit for what we were doing. And we were able to sell those and buy another plane. And we were in the process of training in it, and it had an accident in Alabama. That was in August of 2020. But prior to that, we had adopted Genesis. After Katie's pregnancy, we were essentially told we couldn't have kids anymore. And so we started pursuing the idea of adoption.
Which we had already talked about before we even got married. We knew we wanted to, and it had actually already been in conversation before our 4th pregnancy. But we'd been involved in children's homes and stuff like that prior, so we had a heart for that. But we thought we were going to be able to adopt. Well, Katie was a nurse, and us being in medical world there, we thought we'd adopt a special needs kid, and actually applied for that. But the agency came out and did our home visits and stuff. And at the time we lived all our time in Guatemala as a married couple. We lived at the hangar at the airport. It's almost like an apartment attached.
We had an apartment attached to one of the hangars. And, and so, we had flights going on and
propellers,
pretty big light and
tools.
Lots going on and
social
stuff.
workers are probably not very fond.
So
I don't think they were really excited.
So they went back and they said, we're going to approve you for adoption, but a special needs kid might not work for you guys.
The other thing that was in there was we already had 3 biological children, and they said, you should not. I mean, we were naive and idealistic, and we wanted their input, and they were very appropriate. And they said to me, this takes a lot of time. I mean, you've checked the boxes for every need that's out. Like, these are not, you have 3 other children. Like, and
we had the school and.
No, I think at that point I had stepped back from work, but yes, we had other responsibilities. And the other thing is we are rural. So yes, we had a medical facility, but not at all at the level of caring for those needs. And so, we were, I would like to say our hearts were open and in the right place and excited, but they did help really, bring some reality. I think that we were disappointed.
And I can add 2 bits worth.
Yes.
I'm assuming you probably know that if you check the box for spina bifida or cerebral palsy or, fetal alcohol, that doesn't get checked very often. And so the chances go sky high.
That's right.
That's what's going to come.
That's right. That's right. I think they had a lot of wisdom.
They would have
That's known. Right. They knew a lot we did not.
Yeah.
And I think they were very, again, we're eager and excited. And I remember they said, now, do you want a sibling group or just one? And we were like, wow, that's such a big question. So we said, well, we're definitely open to a sibling group. We said, but we said, if we do only get one this time, does that mean we can't adopt again? And they were kind of like, let's just take it a step at a time. Like you said, they were very good at helping let our passion stay there, but keeping us reality. And so I think there was a part of them like, you know what, let's move into the first one, see how they do. And then we can keep this conversation open. And so go ahead.
They called us and said, basically, we have a perfect little baby if you're interested. And that kind of caught us off guard because we were
expecting an older child with some needs, and
so it was an easy decision. We said yes and went and picked her up. And then just to, accelerate the story a little bit, we had, after her being with us for 2 years, we were able to apply for U.S. citizenship.
So, yeah, we should say Guatemala is not open to international adoption. So we were able to adopt her through our Guatemalan. We have permanent residency, but our kids are citizens. We'd been there for, 10 to 15 years.
So we did a national adoption.
As Guatemalans.
Mm-hmm. And your children would not have been U.S. citizens. They would have been Guatemalan citizens.
They're both. We were able to get our bio
because
kids.
You are.
Because we
are.
Our bio kids are, but our adopted
children
didn't apply to.
Yeah, you have to have had them in your home for 2 full years before you're allowed to apply for citizenship.
So we got Genesis, and after she was with us for 2 years, we applied for citizenship. And then those applications take a long time to get to the right desk. And essentially, if you get your appointment for citizenship, you don't pass it up.
Mm-hmm.
The trouble was we were in the middle of the COVID craziness when we got the call, and Guatemala was not allowing people to travel back and forth very easily. Yeah. And so we got the call, and we knew we couldn't say no. We knew we needed to go. So that's what got us we flew out of Guatemala, went to Arizona, and did her citizenship appointment.
And I'm just going to side note this because we were able to go into Gabriel. So we applied in August. In November, we received the call that said, we understand travel is difficult. Tell us what works for you. So we wrote back and said, we can go anytime after Thanksgiving. I mean, we gave it a few weeks. And they wrote back and said, how would December 10th work? And that was 5 years to the day from losing Gabriel. Day. And so we said, because we were praying really hard about even that. We knew saying no would massively delay, if not deny, her process. But also it was COVID. I mean, travel was not easy. We did not know where we were going to, my parents had just downsized. So, it was not like, oh, there it is, such an easy decision. And so that coming back and saying December 10th, I called Aaron. I'm like, you're not going to believe the day they threw out to us. I think we need to go do this, And so it was a nod from the Lord.
So we came up and got her citizenship appointment. She was approved. It was an easy interview. But they took her Guatemalan passport away. Well, they didn't really take it away, but they took the U.S. visa away, which meant she couldn't travel cross borders
to go back,
and she
could go back to Guatemala, but would not be able to re-enter the States on her Guatemalan
because she didn't have a U.S. Social Security number or a U.S. passport anymore. Now she was a U.S. citizen without a U.S. passport, and if you remember the COVID times, all that stuff was way backed up. You couldn't go into offices and stuff like that,
and you were just totally stuck.
So we were kind of stuck here in the U.S.
We did not want to leave. We could have left and all gone back to Guatemala on our Guatemalan passport, but we didn't want to do that without a U.S. passport in hand because we have family and people in both countries. Everything was so backed up. We had no idea when we would get a U.S. passport. And so we just didn't feel at peace about leaving without all of us having a way to get back into the States together.
Yeah.
And you had brought your entire family up to Arizona.
Correct.
And so you were all together.
Yep, we stayed in a trailer. We bought a little camper and stayed outside my parents in a camper with a little heater inside.
That wasn't a great idea. I don't recommend that.
So you're in Arizona.
Sometimes those are bonding experiences and sometimes they aren't.
Sometimes they're not.
You just need to get out of that situation. So yes.
So you're in Arizona.
But we didn't have anywhere. We bounced around from Airbnb to Airbnb and saw friends and didn't really have a place to go.
Yeah, we were kind of like killing time. So the ministry said, we have something in Illinois. Would you be willing to go there and do? And we were like, great. I mean, we loved being with my parents, but like it had been a few months. We're wondering what we're doing.
When did the plane have the accident?
The accident was in August. And
of the same year.
Yeah, the same
prior
year.
to us going up, yeah.
So you're working on getting this thing fixed.
Well, I hadn't yet. We had it trucked up to Ohio to here at the Coshocton County Airport.
To MMS.
To MMS,
Correct.
yeah.
Yes.
But we really didn't have much of a relationship there. I called up and asked if they'd allow us to store it there. We didn't really know where we were going to do.
They had worked on one of our other planes just a little bit and had done excellent work. So we wanted the plane to be able to be there, but we weren't sure if they had the availability.
Right. I know a few of the people at MMS. It's missionary maintenance services. Right?
Correct.
Right. Am I right? Okay. Right.
And so the plane was there kind of sitting in storage essentially. And then the truth is that plane was a project that I had purchased and spent really years getting it up and flying and in good condition to get into operation down in Guatemala. Mm-hmm. And then when it was wrecked, it was like, oh, you're going to have to do that again. Like it became a project again. And so
actually an even bigger project.
I really did not want to come to Ohio to get involved in that because I knew it was going to be a big deal. But we were stuck in the U.S. and we were at an Airbnb and kind of in the middle of winter, didn't have anywhere to go, and we prayed a lot and I really felt like we needed to come up here to Ohio. And so we came, started working on the plane.
Well, and I'll back up a little bit. Aaron was going to work on his pilot's license. We had a couple things that we thought, while we're here, we'll do it. Every door shut. And then we end up in quarantine in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, for a week, holed up in an Airbnb. I mean, the beauty of Kansas is we could walk around anywhere. There was like nobody, but, and we're going, what are you doing, Lord? And I remember saying to Aaron, like, this is not the first time we've been confused. This is not the first time we've been in these situations. He is clearly shutting all these doors. Where are the open ones? Like, where are the ones we're missing? Mm-hmm. And so after a week, we just spent a lot of time in prayer, and he said, I think we need to go to Ohio. And to sum up, it was like now the doors just all started opening.
We didn't know anybody in Ohio. We didn't know anybody. Like, we had spent very little time.
Yeah.
East of the Mississippi River, really.
Yeah.
I mean, east of Illinois, but
yeah. East
anyway, initially I was like, where are we going to stay and stuff? And so I went on a website and found a realtor, found a house that was like a cheap house that was here. And I was like, hey, maybe we could just buy that cheap house and stay there or something while we're there, because I don't like paying rent. And anyway, talked to the realtor, and it ended up being a disaster of a house and not a good idea. But she was like, hey, we got a place for you to stay, and basically gave us a place to stay. And that was just a kind of a series of things that started falling together. And it was a perfect place. I mean, it was exactly what our family needed. We came in the middle of the winter. It was cold, and but yeah, so I started going to the airport there and met the guys at MMS, or the people there. Started working on the plane a little bit, and pretty soon they got to know me and basically said, hey, you're well qualified to do this type of work. Here's the keys to everything. This place is your place, and have at it. Here you go. And that was just another one of those things where it was just like, okay, God, this is obviously you're doing this. So yeah, I mean, that's become that was what that brought us here and
kept us here.
Has kept us here. Yeah. So
are you guys at home? Do you feel like
we do now.
Yeah.
I mean, we're still torn. We go back and forth, and we are torn, but we feel like this is where we're supposed to be right now.
Yeah.
And
wow.
It's one of those things where you don't know what you don't know, but it's been really good for our kids. The Lord's really opened up. There's a number of things that happened. We were able to find a house that was a unique situation that people don't, in a really nice neighborhood that people are trying to get into, that's hard to get into. And that was a cool connection that I feel like was the Lord. And
it was an old house, and the guy had thought about fixing it up and reselling it, or just selling it as is. And
he kind of inherited it. Yeah.
Handy, and He's beyond handy. He's very capable. Grew up in a construction family. Has built houses.
Was kind of looking for a project house anyway, and so it was one of those that wasn't so far gone that we couldn't live there, so we could
while you're doing the work.
Exactly. Right. And we knew anything we did at that point. We were thinking we were going back to Guatemala, but it was in an area where putting in the work and doing it well and doing it right would increase the resale value. It was a sought after area, so we felt like this is ideal. We can live in it while we fix it up. We can fix it up in a way where we can sell it. And
but one of the neat things that, in Guatemala for years we had connected with the Mennonite community. They have an aviation program there, and I've done some work on their planes, and we've just been connected and worked together. We actually operate out of 2 Mennonite airfields there, and just we've had a good relationship for many years, and they're kind of our people. We've connected.
Exactly.
Growing up in Guatemala, we've homesteaded out of necessity, and then lived simple and had to do a lot of those things, a lot of those things. And so we just, we kind of connected. We were very related. And so, that was in Guatemala before we came, and then when we came here, we were like, oh, we didn't no idea. We're like, oh, look, this is Mennonite community, or this is Anabaptist world, and
it was huge for us.
But we've just moved into this house there, and right across the street was a Mennonite school and church, and so they invited our kids to go to school there. We connected with them, and they invited our kids to go to school there. And that was another, I feel like that doesn't happen to most people,
A really cool,
really neat thing. And so there was just a number of things that fell into place. And we were like, okay, Lord, you're with us, and you're guiding us. And so, it's been neat.
So, you adopted Genesis. She's now how old?
Genesis just turned 8 in August.
Turned 8.
We matched her on her first birthday. And so then we had been here 2 years, continuing to go back and forth. We were doing a mix of homeschooling and schooling through this Mennonite school across the street from us. They use a curriculum that can be used for homeschooling, so it's pretty ideal. And we were back in Guatemala on one of our trips and received a phone call from the government. It's the only way you can legally adopt in Guatemala. So the government agency said, Genesis has a little half-brother. If you guys are interested, our licensing to adopt had lapsed because we were too scattered. We were back and forth. We couldn't do it here. We couldn't do it there. And so they said, if you would like to move forward, we'll push your paperwork through. We'll get you relicensed, and we'll do it all. And so we took a full week on that one to pray. We said, give us a few days. I think at a few days we were even more unsure than we were on the first day. We were like, yes, we'll do this. And then we were like, how and what does that look like? And what about our other kids? And we knew it would require us moving back to Guatemala for a season. Our kids had just finally settled in, had found their people, had found their place. And so it was really hard. It's a decision that, of course, we would always seek the Lord, but usually we would pull counsel in pretty quickly on a decision like that. And this one we said, there's really nobody we could seek counsel from that wouldn't be directly affected by this situation. Our parents, Aaron's parents, and so we really felt like we needed to do it ourselves. And then we did actually reach out to a couple near the end of the week and just talk through things a little bit. But and it was not for lack of desire. We wanted to step into it, but it came with a lot more this time around. Mm-hmm. And so, but we did. We really felt like the Lord just laid on our hearts, Aaron especially, that this was a gift from him. And it really forced us to, even in our conversations, remember what really matters, and that it's, of course, our other kids do matter. And so that was our angst. But aside from it being a gift, the other thing that we felt really strongly was it was an opportunity to change somebody's eternity. And at the same time as being very aware that little 1.5-year-old boys are very sought after in Guatemala, and it is a very Christian country. And I especially felt very, I really needed to hear from the Lord that this was we were the best thing for this child too, that I'm not, an energetic 20-year-old. I'm not even an energetic 30-year-old anymore. And so, being in my 40s, I was very aware of that. And we wanted to know that we were the best thing for him too. And so, it was not a decision we took lightly, but we did feel confirmed from the Lord. And really another obvious part of our heart was to keep our kiddos together as siblings, and just the prayer that will be, and I do believe it will be a very sweet gift to them. It already is. And so we said yes and signed some papers before we left. Pushed hard, I think within 6 or 8 weeks, and a lot of money. We had all of our paperwork translated and set back and, mailed between the two countries and all that kind of stuff, and headed back to Guatemala. We matched with Moses. Well, the match date was kind of done virtually, but we met him on the 24th. Then we're able to kind of be with him on the 26th, and then took him home a few days after that. So stayed in Guatemala for 6-ish months in there, and did
Took
our
a long
paperwork.
time to get a visa for him too, to be able to come up.
And really, that's another story that could be long, but we'll just sum up with the way the Lord did it. We were really wrestling at that point. Our kids did have a hard time, our older two especially, and down there in Guatemala those months, and their requests were not like, I miss Walmart being around the corner. They're saying, I miss my friends. I miss a Bible study in person. I miss just being in, and we have a wonderful missionary community in Guatemala, but it's very small. Mm-hmm. And there's not a lot of the kids. It's like a stair stepping. It's not a group of kids all at the same age. And so we really, we heard their hearts being in a good place. And so we were really torn. We were ready to stay. But anyway, the way the Lord provided the visa, we felt like was a very clear, I have you in the States now. And so we knew we would continue to go back and forth, but that was a good confirmation for us to feel some peace that we needed to be here in Ohio in this time. And then got back here. So 2.5 years ago, January of 24. And I started to connect with the adoption fostering world. I will say in there too, when we went through the adoption process for our daughter Genesis, we had our eyes open to the massive needs in the fostering community. And so in Guatemala, as citizens or doing it through Guatemala, you can only adopt or foster. And so by the end of that time of adopting Genesis, we really said we'd like to explore what it would be to foster. And so that was already in our minds. And we had actually been kind of putting some of that into place before we ended up here, and then obviously would not have been able to foster at all.
Is that why you connected with Encourage?
Well, so we got up here, and I started looking. Really, I was pretty overwhelmed. It was a few months in, and bonding had been really hard. I'm sure there were lots of factors in that, but I remember saying to Aaron, okay, I need this to be the bottom. We had put all of our kiddos in school now, except for our oldest, who's fairly independent homeschooling. Really, my life had changed completely. I obviously still had friendships, and I have wonderful, wonderful dear friends that pray for us and reach out to us. But my life looked nothing. I was not the same person anymore. And so I knew that I needed to start to find some tools and some resources. So actually, one of the ladies at our kiddos' school gave me a book, Though the Foundations Be Destroyed, What Shall the Righteous Do? And that really helped paint a picture and put some feet to the tools I had learned previously, but I needed now on a much deeper level with our son and trying to figure out how to maneuver all that. And so that really helped give me some hope. Another key thing in there being that hope is a part of this. And so I ended up connecting with, actually a lady approached me in Kime parking lot and said, oh, tell me about your son. Is he adopted? Is he fostered? And they had also fostered. And so she helped connect me to Pure Gift of God, which I had been desiring to connect with. Landed at Larry Yoder's office. Poor guy got like 5 hours, as you can imagine, like a year and a half of pent up. I don't know what to do with this, and what about this, and what do you think of this, and what do you whatever. And so Larry was wonderful. He's very calm and steady. And
he is awesome.
oh, he's so great. And so he said, here's this. And he said to me, I really think you would enjoy Heather at Encourage. He said, I'd encourage you to connect with them too. So I did connect with the moms group at Pure Gift of God. I mean, they do such incredible things. And then I did connect with Heather at Encourage. And so I was driving about 45 minutes to their site for their moms groups at Pure Gift of God. And it was wonderful. But I remember leaving one of the times where I'd connected with these other moms across the table. And I said, they drove 40 minutes south to get there. I drove 40 minutes north to get there. We're not going to, meet each other at a park. By the time we even get there, our kids are not, have already been in the car for 45 minutes. So I was talking with another friend, David Schwartz, at CCHO, which is Encourage's umbrella organization. Mm-hmm. And so I said, what would you think of helping me organize? And he's incredible at this stuff. So I would love to just have an event here and start to bring some of these resources here. Like we need people in our area, and we have wonderful other families that we know that have fostered and adopted through the years and all of that. But there's just not gospel-centered things happening here often in Coshocton County. And so, I guess not here, but down by us. So we started working towards this event, and Larry was right. I mean, Heather and I hit it off. We're good friends. We work well together now and all of that. And so as we started brainstorming things, and she gave me good feedback, and I said, how do we get this down to us? It ended up leading to me working for them. But what was really neat in there was, as you said, is that what led to Encourage? While there is things that are specific to foster care, things that are specific to adoption, and I don't want to negate the challenges you go through in foster care, like you are aware that reunification could happen. I also don't want to negate the challenges that come with a private adoption, which is, and ours was a little different, but you have to find all those resources on your own. And it's kind of like you took a deep dive in. And so being able to really just even chat with Heather and who's now my other director, Jesse, we met a couple times, and just maneuvering those and hearing that same heart of going, it is hard. And we would be naive and remiss and, obvious liars if we said it wasn't. There's no way to pretend fostering to adopt, that this is not a hard thing. These are broken situations to start with. And so, of course, it's going to be hard. You're stepping into brokenness, and you're opening your home to that brokenness to come in too. So it is hard, but there is hope. There is support. Our story is wrought with the power of community stepping in hard times and supporting. Yeah. There is also the redemptive work of the Lord. Our story is wrought with experiencing the Lord in powerful ways and saying, don't ever leave us. We'll give up anything to keep following you. And adoption and foster care has been a key piece of following in that faith, and watching him bring redemption, watching him bring hope, watching him bring resources. It is so hard. It's been the most humbling thing we've done. Yet it has been, for me, the greatest thing we've done in allowing the Lord to move. And these are children that weren't given a chance.
There is no better picture of his adoption of us.
That's right.
Than adoption
Amen.
On a horizontal level.
Amen.
There is no better picture.
Amen.
And just because it's hard doesn't make it bad.
That's right. It's exactly right.
It's hard, but it's good.
Amen.
And it's holy work. And there's just so many. I think as obviously I'm an American that has not left America very often.
Right.
I've been one other place one other time. But I think we as our culture have basically equated hard
equals bad.
Amen.
And so
That's
if it's
right.
hard, I don't want to do it.
That's right.
And I think that's so damaging and it's so wrong in so many ways.
We could not agree more.
But I will say, I used to say to everybody I met, hey, you're a great family. You should.
Yes.
I used to say that.
Yes.
I don't say that anymore.
Amen to that too.
I don't.
That's right.
I don't say
That's
that
right.
anymore. And now,
That's right.
if somebody comes and says, hey, Marlon, I think we're being called to do, I will give you the shirt off my back
That's
to
right.
help
That's
in every
right.
way I can.
That's right.
But not until he calls them. I'm not going to be responsible
Yes.
for, because it is
Yes.
not easy.
That's right.
It is not easy. And so I just love everything about everything you're saying, because it's exactly where I wish more people would take those blinders off and see the situations that these kids are in.
That's right.
We as adults can step into that and say, hey, you should not be carrying this by yourself. We can
Absolutely.
carry a load for you as a child. And,
That's
and we
right.
as adults can step in. So I'm going to step off my soapbox now, but
No,
yeah,
Marlon, that's exactly it.
it is. And in a way, I think the churches have dropped the ball for a
Yes.
long time.
Yes.
Precisely because it's hard.
That's right.
And yet we are missing opportunities to make a difference on an eternal scale for
That's right.
for the most innocent.
Well, it's really interesting because so we get here and we had already had it in our hearts in Guatemala. And so naturally I pursued it here of stepping into caring for, I'll just say burned out missionaries. But
Right.
we had talked about, a place for them to come have a retreat. Could we get a house that we could do something like that? We talked about missionary coaching. So, the last half of, really all of 2024, I'm knocking on every one of these doors, missionary coaching, all of these things. How do I get, and again, all the doors are shutting and I'm like, this makes zero sense. Like, it's such an obvious area for us to be able to pour out into. And we have such a heart for this. And we've
just simply
walked
walk
through hard things.
Right.
That's right.
To walk with these
right.
guys.
To walk with them.
Right.
And all these things. And then Heather calls and says, hey, would you consider joining our team to expand? And I'm literally a few weeks in, if even that. And it smacks me in the face. Duh. These are the missionaries. Right. These are the ones I'm walking alongside of. Because again, there are specific challenges to being a missionary in a foreign country, in a country that you did not grow up in, 100%. Mm-hmm. There are very specific challenges to being a missionary on the own soil. And we can say that as now missionaries living in the United States. That's hard. But I tell you what, the mission field that is foster care and adoption and foster to adoption, there are specific challenges that are way more daily and way harder than packing everything up and moving to another country. And I really do believe, and you kind of touched on this, Marlon, it is the massively unseen mission field literally right outside our door, if not sometimes inside our house. We're not meeting these people. We're not, it's not uncommon for our kiddos to invite a child over that is in foster care. And so it's not even that far outside of our door often. And yet it is so easy because we grew up here to have all the reasons why it isn't a mission field or why we shouldn't step into it or the complexities of it. When you go to another country, it takes several years before you start to be like, oh, look, this culture is wrought with all the same types of stuff my culture is wrought with. It takes a bit. You're excited. These people look different than what you grew up with. They are different.
And you just don't know.
That's right. That's right. At the end of the day, the foster care situation in Guatemala is extremely similar, if not almost exact. Now, prostitution is legal in Guatemala, so there's another factor that goes into the foster care system. But outside of that, addiction, drug addiction, alcoholism, the poverty, the lack of resources, a lack of understanding of the true power of the gospel, we loved on these people in our clinics as they came in and sought wholeness and healing for their families. And when they couldn't quite get there enough to be, where their kiddos needed some extra care for a bit, there is the foster care world that we were ready to step into or pursuing that. So at the end of the day, it's a very, very, very similar situation as here, if not almost exact. And so, yeah, it is. I think, as you said, the church really has dropped the ball. And I've been able to have some really awesome conversations with a couple pastors that have just said, we have dropped the ball. But how in the world do we step into this? What does that look like? It's so complex. It's so, we have to, it'll affect everything. If
do you think it can it be as simple as just simply having the heart and the willingness to
Absolutely.
say that we care enough to go and do something?
Amen. And I think really, I do want to reiterate what you said. I do not believe everybody is called to foster, and I do not believe everybody's called to adopt or foster to adopt or any of that. And I do mean that very strongly.
I agree. Yeah.
But I do believe everybody can do something. And I also really believe
It's a command.
It's a command. It is a
It's
command.
not an optional thing. Hey, I think you should consider.
That's right.
Sorry.
And when we are
It's not.
No, absolutely. And when we are struggling with a biblical command, for at least I will speak for myself, usually my inability to step into it is directly related to my amount of faith. And faith is hard because we don't have all the answers. There's a ton of unknowns. There's a ton of questions in our mind. We're not sure we really can trust God on that level if we're honest.
Yeah.
We're definitely not sure we can trust our family or our partners or our friends or our church to step in.
And it's a scary thing.
It is very scary.
It's a scary thing.
But when we can put it down to a step of faith, it was a step of faith for us to, for me to go to Guatemala, for Aaron to go to Guatemala in the first place, for us to stay there. Faith was a daily part of our conversations, at least weekly, monthly. Same thing, it's hard, it's scary, but can it be as simple as you take that step of faith? And maybe it starts with volunteering at a respite night and going in and just playing games with these kiddos and loving on them. Maybe it's making a meal for a foster family and just taking the extra hour and sitting there and asking that foster mom how you really can pray for her and love her well. And maybe then you babysit the kids. Maybe it's licensing to foster, but you're just going to do respite and you're going to provide that respite for a full-time family. And then maybe the Lord does. It's not that it has to be a step of faith as in you sold everything.
Right.
You went, you gave, you jumped all in. There's an incredible beauty in this that you can do it in a stair-stepping way. And there are people, agencies, churches, families to connect with and walk it. Not that they're going to be able to alleviate all the hard or make it go away.
Yeah.
But my word, they'll walk with you through it.
I just met Julie Kirby from Hope's House Foster.
Yes. Okay.
Do you know Julie?
I have only chatted with her on the phone.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
Yeah. Actually, I don't even know if I made it to the phone. I think we just texted, but I did have to write her about something. So
I love that lady.
Yes.
She's wonderful.
Yeah.
And she needs certain things like diapers and wipes and obviously, this there's going to be folks that are listening to this that are on the other side of the planet, which is wonderful.
Right.
But there are often places like that in other corners of the world.
Absolutely.
And I think it's important for folks to consciously think about the fact that foster parents need a break.
That's right.
Something awful.
That's right.
They need some.
That's right.
They need someone to step in and say, you know what, I can give you some respite.
That's right.
And someone like Julie, who's providing so much for when that call comes at midnight, 1 o'clock, and you go and you can get all the clothes you need. She wants to give you a week's worth of meals so that you can focus on the child.
That's right.
And it's so beautiful.
That's right.
So
that's right.
I could talk about that for a long time, and I don't Yeah.
No, but it's so,
There's always something you can do.
Absolutely. And I think we as a church are so quick to step up for, not every church, but it's so much easier to step up for foreign missions. It is so much harder to know what that looks like in the foster care world.
Well, yeah, because you can send money and it's far away and you don't have to.
And it's kind of romanticized.
Absolutely.
Isn't it? Yeah. It's kind of like, oh,
Absolutely.
that's wonderful. Let's help them.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
In the backyard and in the government building at the county
That's right.
courthouse.
That's right.
Kids, sleeping on benches, and it's.
That's right.
Yeah.
Kids going through the exact same thing that missionaries left their hometown to go take care of in another country.
And it's right
It's the
here.
exact same situation in this country. We were helping. The tool that the Lord provided in Guatemala was through aviation and medicine.
Yeah.
But the ultimate, what we were talking about earlier, the ultimate place that the gospel comes in is through the family, is through relationships. So when you get down to that level, it's the exact same thing in both countries. And the enemy has plenty of ways to mask it here and to keep us from engaging in it here. And I love that you
distracted.
That's right. And we have plenty of things that help us not think about it, quick answers. And I love that you touched on respite, because I think it is a really beautiful place for people to get involved if they feel like they're at a spot where they would be interested in opening their home to kids, but they aren't quite sure what it looks like. Mm-hmm. You still go through the licensing process. You still learn a ton about the need, a ton about the resources, the hope. You get to hear you get to hear this anyway, but you really hear them at least at our trainings for the hopeful stories. This is the redemptive process you get to walk these kids through. This is the way the Lord gets to use you to step in and tell stories. And I know every agency is a little different, so I don't want to overgeneralize, but at least with ours, with Encourage, our respite families are primarily used for our full-time foster families. So they get to be Aunt Susie and Uncle Joe, or Grandma Sally and Grandpa Bob. And so there is a real place to even get to continue to make those impacts in those kiddos' lives, even if you're not full-time stepping into it. And then, of course, let the Lord go where he's going to go with it. But I think that is one of the ways that the enemy keeps the wool over our eyes is helping us believe, or letting us believe that if we can't full-time step into it, then there's just nothing we can do.
Last question. This episode is being brought to you by my friends at Kentucky Lumber. Recently, I had a chance to sit down with Derek and his wife Lisa and their whole family, and let me tell you, they are wonderful. They have stepped into some of the hardest situations with fostering and adoption. If you care about the least of these and the kids that are coming out of really hard places, and you want to buy from a family who gets it and cares about those kids, they are living on the front lines of some of the most unimaginable situations that I've come across in years. From siding to trim to flooring, they have it all. You can find them at drywallhaters.com. How do we pray for you guys now? Today.
What do you think? No, go ahead.
I don't know. I mean, I just pray that we continue to hear his voice and that he would continue to lead us. And
are you still
that we
working
could
on
trust
the plane?
him. We still have work to do there. The aviation side of thing continues to grow. It's been neat. We've got some people interested in joining the team, which is exciting, and that's been a big prayer.
Down at MMS.
Yeah, from there. But we need help. We need more staff.
And you're fixing planes for people all over the world.
At MMS, they're going all over the place, and that's a great organization. Really, they do excellent work. It's a bunch of just great guys. I mean, they're like family to us, and the way they've come around and supported us, and then it's just neat because they do everything with excellence and integrity, and it's been good. So they train young guys and do a good job at that. And
their hearts are to serve, ultimately.
We could, we've continued to grow and serve other ministries in Guatemala, and that could even expand. Got some avenues that we're pursuing there, and that's exciting. And so we pray that the Lord would lead us in that area, send the right people and right connections. And what else?
Yeah, I think that's, practically speaking, the airplane getting done would be a really good thing. Take a load off of Aaron. I think, you get this, Marlin. You walk through having a family with kiddos that have come through adoption and fostering. There are big questions, and there's a lot they're grappling. And I think we're just always praying for wisdom in how to lead our family in that and lead it well. And, when to ask things, when to lead things, looking for resources, looking for that added support. I mean, we have been really blessed to find a lot of it, but that it's a never ending thing, and it will affect their lives forever. And so it does obviously affect our lives. And as you said, we want to be the adults to help or carry that in certain seasons for them. And so I think that is a daily prayer of just give us wisdom, Lord, in all of our children. Our bio kids are in there too, of course. And but again, just also want to just speak out the faithfulness of the Lord and bringing things our way. Such a beautiful way.
Well, guys, thank you. Thanks for coming back. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having us.
This has been wonderful. Absolutely.